Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Carson Fox for Fox on West Virginia Sports. And I gotta admit on the onset to buckle up, buckle in, because this one took a whole lot of research. Going back to a couple of videos on the day in which Darian DeVries was bought out by the Indiana Hoosiers, and I was kind of riding an emotional high in the same kind of way that I feel like most of Mountaineer Nation was, seeing red, feeling betrayed, feeling as if he, almost like a Rich Rodriguez in 2007, kind of leaving West Virginia at an altar. And I made the argument that West Virginia has to come to terms in the new world and reality of college sports, in which the SEC and the Big Ten, because of ESPN and Fox Sports, are making X, and teams that are in the ACC conference, Big 12 conference, G6, and even less so, are making Y. And we have to now come to the terms with the reality of that these schools, whether it's poaching players, poaching coaches, West Virginia does not have the financial means to be able to compete with these schools in the new age of college athletics. And what we've really been feeling since 2021, when NIL became legal, and not in the terms of like, yeah, Todd Gurley, you can sign trading cards, or Johnny Manziel if you want to sell signed jerseys, or Terrell Pryor exchange your Rose Bowl ring for tattoos. No, this is full on backdoor channels through collectives, outside agencies that work on behalf of the athletics department, through crowd-funded and booster-driven donations that aren't technically donations, are paying players. That now, as of this upcoming Monday, the whole point into this is, as of this upcoming Monday, April 7th, there will be a ruling on the House settlement, which I don't need to go, I feel like, all the way into the details. But if you kind of heard this, and again, you're maybe sort of more of a casual fan, that you like, in all the legalese and everything behind it, is going to, in theory, there is an agreement between the NCAA and the power conferences, and I think a class action lawsuit on behalf of former players that's now establishing a precedent. It's going to be a huge payout by the NCAA and all of these member institutions, and some that are even fighting back, but are now going to, instead of have the collectives in the way that they operate, bringing those in-house, letting 501c3 tax deductions be allowed, because you're now giving true donations to the university, to the athletic department, to then fund the players. But we don't have collective bargaining. We don't have any sort of, the kind of contracts that, say, the NFL has with its players. But now every single team between the SEC, Big 10, ACC, Big 12 will be sharing revenue in the amount of $20.5 million with the student athletes within its athletic department. And I talked about back in January how right before Donald Trump became president, that the Biden administration put out a memo through Title IX that's saying all of this revenue sharing that was happening through the universities would have to be proportionately distributed between female student athletes and male student athletes, and how that was a complete debacle that could ruin college sports as we know it, because of the many different reasons why that just does not make business financial success when your only revenue generating sports are football and men's basketball. And teams like Texas Tech went whole hog in the transfer portal in January to recruit as many transfer students as they possibly could. And, other programs, but Texas Tech namely being the big player out there, and publicly announcing how they were going to distribute their revenue dollars of the $20.5 million. So much to football, so much to men's basketball, and then split between the Olympic sports and female sports in a very small percentage in that way, shape, and form. So This is all to say, and what I think we can take heart in as West Virginia fans is that very publicly, through many of the last several months, Athletics Director Ren Baker has said that West Virginia will be a full participant in rev sharing starting next school year, which is phenomenal because every school in the SEC, I mean, this is what we'll have to see shake out. But teams in the SEC have no excuse. Teams in the Big Ten have no excuse because ESPN and Fox Sports can bankroll their rev shoe in a state in which they can still pay coaches high salaries. They can still use their operation to, the rev share is going to be differently, but it's just like there's no excuse. Going back this past calendar year, as the TV money from ESPN and Fox Sports has finally hit those schools' bank accounts with the new contract deals that they have, they've had no excuse to not be able to compete financially at the highest level. It will be very interesting to see who can and who can't out of the Big 12 and the ACC rev share at top dollar. And also, very out there in the ether, a lot of people are wondering, even though you're still distributing through the rev share, the $20.5 million, that's fine and dandy, but can't schools like Ohio State, #1 athletics department in America, or Texas, or Alabama, or just again, name any one of those SEC and Big Ten schools, can't they still do outside NIL deals to go under the table and cut that out? Well, as part of this House settlement, Deloitte apparently on the NCAA's behalf is going to become a clearinghouse through NIL deals at I think it was a pretty low number in the ballpark of $500. I wonder if that'll get ironed out, that number. I really don't think it makes much of a difference beyond $5,000 to $10,000 because the money is, if you're going to pay, if you're a local car dealership, let's say Toothman Ford, is who's an awesome sponsor of WVU Athletics and has been for years in the NIL game, but you're going and paying, let's just say, I know in terms they've given a lot of vehicles and product in kind can be transferable and stuff like that, but say you're giving a $500 NIL deal, I don't think that needs to be bureaucratically run through the chain, through the clearinghouse to be able to do that. But we're talking with these collective NIL deals, like a Bryce Underwood with Barstool Sports, or that one's the first one that comes to mind. Or now Quinn Ewers in all the Dr. Pepper commercials seemed like a legit deal. But it's these deals that are done on behalf of the university's collective to then pay the student athletes that they want to get rid of as the NCAA. And I think that's kind of really what everybody outside of those top halves of college football to get that operation out. I don't know why the SEC and the Big Ten would commit to that, but reading some of the articles, I think it was The Athletic wrote about this, or Ross Dellinger, and even some of these guys like Chip Kelly weighed in and said glowing reports about the potential for because I think that's what everybody wants to do, is kind of put everybody as equally on a playing field to root out root out cheating as best as human. Maybe I'm overstating it, but and maybe that's just coach speak. But there's just so many problems that are not just talked about ad nauseum, and the issues really is come to full circle now as the NCAA tournament is happening, with the transfer portal windows, with these crazy, the crazy number of transfer portal entrants in some of the NIL deals that haven't been verified but are kind of out there. So how do I pull this back to West Virginia? In December, so just 4 months ago, CNBC ranked the 75 most valuable college athletic programs in NCAA football subdivision, so FBS. And this list is reflective, I want to get this accurately, of the current enterprise value of each program, starting with a base revenue multiple of 4 for all institutions, and then adjusting the multiple for variables, including conference affiliation, estimated NIL spend, school subsidies, number of alumni, and other factors that can catalyze future revenue growth and profitability. That is, whoa, if I kind of went over your head there or ranked it, is basically is a valuation that is going to be used by the TV networks, by the people who determine the next iteration of conference realignment, which I'm, if you've been following my channel, I'm saying is going to be coming in the next 5 years when we get to true collective bargaining between the top, that's what I don't know, 40 to 60 halves in college football. And that's going to be the new Division I, and everybody else has to figure it out how they how they figure conference realignment and all of that coming down the pike. And this is why we should care, because West Virginia out of 75 ranks 60th. And you think to yourself, okay, all right, Carson, if you're saying 40 to 60 teams, that, we're still 60, with the way things have been going over the last several years under the Neil Brown era in West Virginia, kind of as I've said, especially in 22, it seemed like fell a peg in national relevance, and has kind of been very mediocre in the Big 12 conference since they've joined it in 2012. But when I see schools like Louisville 34th, Pitt 42nd, Syracuse 49th, Maryland 52nd, Virginia Tech 53rd, Boston College and Rutgers 48th and 49th respectively, better than West Virginia, that's unacceptable. What I feel like is why West Virginia is punching above its weight class is there were only 2 programs ranked higher than West Virginia with less athletic department revenue. It was UCLA at $105 million and Kansas at $102 million. West Virginia coming in at $106 million. If you're a listener of the Three Guys Before the Game podcast with Tony Caridi and Brad Howe and Hoppy Kirchvold, this was talked about, I think, right one of their shows about Darren DeVries leaving for Indiana, and they took a question from the mailbag, and it was someone who was feeling really down in the dumps. Can't recall their name. I'd love to kind of replay it for you, but don't really have time technically to set all that up. But kind of feeling down in the dumps, like that West Virginia just too small of a state, too small financially, and the comeback from Brad Howe was, I've seen this program in my time being here grow from like a $30 million budget to a now over $100 million budget. And here's the thing. Living inside the bubble, you have this perspective and this perception of what West Virginia is. And I hold it in very high esteem. If you cut me, I bleed old gold and blue. But we're not the only fish in the pond, y'all. We are one of, I just said, when you're below all of those schools that I still consider West Virginia's top rivals, Penn State not included, but Louisville, Pitt, Syracuse, Maryland, Virginia Tech, Boston College and Rutgers, you got to compete with them. You got to be higher than them on their base valuation. Now, there are some things that I feel like are just out of the lens and scope of what I could advocate for and argue for a video such as this that's going to change anything. For example, conference payouts, TV revenue, bowls, licensing. I went and found West Virginia's most recent budget that's available, and I encourage all Mountaineer fans to go out there and look at it and see what is, where does the $106 million that makes up West Virginia's total athletic department revenue, and what makes all of that up. So the things that are not, are not going to change that I can make any sort of an argument or change: media rights, NCAA distributions, conference distributions, the bowl revenue, generated. licensing, advertising, just going through, again, bowl revenues, all stuff like that. That's not going to change. As it pertains to tickets and the whole WVU game day experience, I'm going to park and send you back to my playlist that's part of my channel from a year ago, around this same time, that I did, I think, like a 4 or 5 part series on the WVU game day experience and things that I advocated for, from ticket sales to the like in-game stadium experiencing, parking, concessions. How about Coastal Carolina going out there, y'all, and saying they're going to give away free concessions? Like, might have been radical, if someone came on here and said something like that, but obviously someone came out there and said, yeah, we're going to be the school to go out there and go and do this. And like, kudos to the Chanticleers for doing that. But all of those things I think are still applicable and relevant to this conversation that I'm going to have about how WVU Athletics can add more revenue. But I don't, and this is kind of on the fringes. Like, if you're not going to be making the same kind of TV media distribution rights that the SEC has, and so on and so forth, which makes up a huge ticket item in the budget, there are some other things that are ancillary, but I think can be applicable, that West Virginia can do to the game day experience, because you can't make the game day experience more expensive. You can't. West Virginia, Oddspedia a year ago ranked West Virginia as the second most expensive experience in the country. And this was during the Neil Brown years when, again, West Virginia, had its worst 6-year stretch in modern program history. And it was still so expensive. So I'm not advocating for raising prices on the ticket. In fact, if you watch some of those videos, I think I have some pretty good ideas. Again, they're still applicable, so go back and watch that. But I'll talk about some of the other things that aren't going to be affected by, again, the game day experience, making that more expensive, and it hasn't anything to do with the conference affiliation. First and foremost, and like, I don't want this to be a video about how to fix WVU as a whole, but fixing the enrollment problem. According to College Tuition Compare, West Virginia University's enrollment decreased from 29,175 students to 24,200 students from 2014-15 to 23-24. That's a 17% decrease. That there has been a drop in the total number of students that are attending West Virginia University in almost a 10-year period. That's a big drop. And that's not just West Virginia. As someone who works professionally in this college enrollment marketing industry, that's affecting the entire Northeast and will continue to affect schools that are in the Northeast until the year 2036, titled the Enrollment Cliff. So West Virginia is just one of many, the schools that are kind of in the boat and feeling the effects of drop of enrollment. But where that comes in terms of like dollars and cents is, I had to look this up. West Virginia students pay $1,400 in student fees per undergraduate. So let's just say if only $100 of that $1,400 that they spend, in student fees, that go to a whole bunch of different things, goes to the athletic department to fund the sports operation, considering the 5,000 student difference that I talked about from 2014-15 to 2023-24, that's $500,000. That is a big, a number that can affect things. That, like, just think $500,000 more dollars in the bank, how that $500,000 more could be utilized. New president Michael Benson, who starts this summer from Coastal Carolina, has been there for the last 4 years, did an exceptional job down at Coastal in facility improvements, university partnerships, and driving enrollment. So that is what I think. West Virginia has made a great move, going out there, finding this guy, and the Board of Trustees making a good move in Michael Benson. I'm sure that's what he's going to try and do. And also, with the facility improvements, I think it's pretty clear that Ren Baker, the next capital project that will be undertaken at WVU is the inclusion of luxury boxes at the football stadium. If you were one of the many thousands who completed that survey, I think it was in the fall or so, and they showed some drawings of where it would take place on the press box side. I think that's just coming. And I think the rationale there being, well, if we have these huge luxury these luxury boxes that cost arms and a leg for the high rollers and the big boosters and donors to go and spend, then that might lower ticket prices for the rest of us. But yeah, to each his own, whatever. But just know that I think that's because I don't think the football stadium, basketball stadium, baseball stadium need the kinds of facelifts that they needed when West Virginia joined the Big 12 that now we've seen over the last 10 years. You have the track and field facility. You have the aquatic center. From a capital improvement, you have the push car center for football and everything going on. So it's these other revenue type of generating areas that I think Benson will work in tandem with Baker. Another line item that I guess you could kind of put as part of this. So again, driving enrollment creates more student fees, more money into the athletic budget. Looking at the budget, line item number 2, and the title of this is direct state or other government support. Well, I know that the state of West Virginia has a many number of things that it would want state support from, but I can't imagine that it is, not a good thing. I have to imagine that it is a good thing, not to use a double negative here, that having a mountaineer in the governor's chair as compared to a Marshall guy is going to be a good thing for WVU athletics. So Patrick Morrissey, I think what would be better than this investigation into the National College Corrupt Association or whatever he put on the front of his lectern when he called that press conference when West Virginia didn't make the NCAA tournament, is there money that can be used to fund the WVU athletic department in this revenue sharing era? And it's like, hold up, Carson, if you want to play the other side of the coin again, infrastructure, education, all of these different things. Why are we using state money, to fund the university's athletic department? For all of the reasons that I just mentioned about enrollment. Because what is the best front porch for advertising dollars and publicity and promotion? I'm sure that the numbers haven't come out just yet on High Point University, but all of the publicity and all the hubbub that they were trying to create for them for making the NCAA tournament this year. And I knew, on the Monday after the brackets revealed, about High Point was all over my social media feed and advertising itself as a university, and the impact that then that'll have on driving applications and driving students to enroll at your university. And also the tourism, y'all, for athletics and getting, then if you have a higher enrollment and then you bring parents in for parents weekend or move-in day, you put heads in beds in hotel rooms and by eating out at the restaurants and all. If West Virginia University does well from an enrollment standpoint, like we all kind of know of it during the mid-2000s, early 2010s glory years there in the Big 12 conference, this will fix a lot of the downturn I feel like that happened. Then again, the impacting the mountain, more students, more you're having less complaints about the student section on social media, better engagement from your fan base with your students, filling out the stadium, better attendance numbers that then are used. All of this, I'm telling you, it's all full cycle. So I'm just saying, I think it is a good investment on the state here during this 5-year pivotal period, I'm telling you, when the next and last iteration of conference realignment is going to happen in Division I college sports, for this to be your moment, for West Virginia to go whole hog in on again and help out. So there's an extra say $500,000 in student fees because of drive enrollment. You get if some dollars invested from the state government. I don't know what that number might be, but you get what I'm saying. Here's another one, and if you've tuned in this long, 25 minutes, this one's going to be the hammer. And I really appreciate you tuning in, and I really, really, really want to be respectful about this one and coming from a place of appreciation and grace and all of that jazz. But West Virginia should sell the naming rights to Milan Puskar Stadium. Oh my gosh, Carson, did you really just say that? I'm sorry, but if you are a Mountaineer fan, or even if you're a friend of a Mountaineer fan, what do we call it? We call it Mountaineer Field. As Huey Mack said in his Country Roads remix, I'm pretty sure I had my first beer inside a Mountaineer Field. Everybody calls it Mountaineer Field. And I'm tired of hearing ESPN announcers butcher it on the intro when they do their intros and calling it Milan Puskar Stadium, or I even think Pat McAfee's messed that up, or maybe he's one of the few that actually gets it right. But first of all, no one can pronounce it. So for one reason or another, unless you're from Morgantown and even know who Milan Puskar was, and people still know it from a sense of Mountaineer Field first. So that's why I'm not saying that you need to touch the name Mountaineer. It can be Mountaineer Field at blank stadium and selling those naming rights. Here's where here's my take on why I feel West Virginia should do this. Penn State, within the month, just accepted a $50 million gift to the field naming rights at Beaver Stadium. So they're going to go the opposite route. They're going to sell the field naming rights, but keep Beaver Stadium. Whereas I'm saying keep Mountaineer Field, change the stadium name. A Penn State alum who is CEO of West Shore Home Remodeling bought the rights for 15 years, $50 million. Did the math on that? That's $3.3 million per year that the athletic department is now taking in to fund its whole rev share operation and everything else that goes a part of this for the next 15 years, $50 million. So I wanted to look back and I wanted to do my own research on this because, for one, I want to be respectful because I don't want to do the same kind of damage, I feel like, in my take, that the kind of family relationship that the Pittsburgh Pirates had with the family of Bill McKechnie at their spring training facility years ago down in Bradenton, Florida. Having gone to that stadium whenever I was in middle school, and really damaged the relationship between the Pirates and the McKechnie family in trying to sell the naming rights to that stadium, because I want to be appreciative. But so I looked into the history of this. It was back in 2003. The WVU Board of Governors approved the naming opportunity and changed the stadium's name in honor of Milan, who goes by Mike, Puskar, in November of 2003. And it was at that time that Puskar made a $14.5 million donation to the athletic department and a $5.5 million donation to the university for academic needs, and then athletic needs got 14.5. Well, Milan Puskar died back in 2011. I'm not sure if there was an endowment as part of his estate that was given to WVU or his family still big contributors. I looked into it. I think it's like the Summit Society or something like that. I don't have a WVU football program to see if they print everybody's name in there to try and do some cross-referencing and detective work to see, if that's his son or his daughter or however, and how much they're still giving back to the university. But And West Virginia still does have the Pushkar Leadership Scholars Program. Keep that. They named the Pushkar Center, again, outside the stadium that was, just newly unveiled this past football season, that was like a big work in progress for, over a year during the Neil Brown era, finishing touches on all of the renovations that were happening to the football stadium. But, that was 20 years. That's now 20 years worth of appreciation for that donation, and that is 20 years for $20 million that were given to WVU. So over 20 years now, 21. Whereas now Penn State is getting $50 million for 15 years worth for their naming rights. The Milan manufacturing plant that was in Morgantown was purchased by West Virginia University for $1 in 2022. Yes, back there behind Kegler's in Wings Ole, that whole plant was bought for $1 million. So, or for $1, and is now, Milan Pharmaceuticals has now been purchased by a parent company. So it's not Milan Pharmaceuticals. It's just a, subsidiary now that's under the name of. So I want to say, thank you to the Pushkar state, the Pushkar family, Mike specifically, who has now, rest in peace for 14 years. But I think it's time that West Virginia can move on and sell those naming rights. Now, maybe they just have kept the name in honor because they don't feel as if, they will get the kind of top dollar that they're looking for, or the right fit partner to go out there and buy the naming rights to the stadium for the number that they'd like. But in 2023, Diversified Energy extended its corporate partnership with WVU Athletics through 2031. So I feel as if West Virginia may already have a lead on a partner there. If they want to, again, so you have the Diversified Energy Terrace, which is kind of what West Virginia has as luxury box seating now. Could Diversified Energy have that? And here's what I'll say. And this is someone I think West Virginia should fully embrace as part of everything in its collaborative cross-marketing efforts. Would it not be hilarious in terms of you're going to throw this name out there, but I think he would do it and spend the money to do it, and it would be respectful because it is an alum of the program who's already given so much back, is to name it the Pat McAfee Stadium, or Pat McAfee Shows Stadium. Money spends no matter whose hand it's coming out of, y'all, whose wallet and who writes the checks. And so, whether you like him or you don't like him or think fondly of his playing career or not, perhaps because of just one game in 2007, I think opening up the naming rights opportunity, and if Pat McAfee wants to go and spend as much as Mike Pushkar did in 2003, or somewhere even more so that what West Shore Home Remodeling did at Beaver Stadium, so be it. Open up the opportunity. And and let them, and so what I'll say about McAfee is he is the greatest spokesman. I mean, even more so than I feel like what Mike Benson as the university president can ever offer for this institution, because of the marketing. He is probably the most powerful person in sports media right now, and he bleeds old gold and blue. And you now have this perfect opportunity that, hey, he has, whether rightly or wrongly, for the one, the argument in the way that I felt about WVU's hiring of Rich Rodriguez on the onset, you now have this golden opportunity where Pat has his guy who's going to be used, I'm sure on weekly segments during the football season. The marketing that they got, during his press conference in December, Like, he is an incredible ambassador for the university, that in a crowded field of the Ohio States and the then the Michigans and the USCs and the Alabamas, the other elites out there who have their alumni in the sports media field planting their flag all over the place on ESPN College Game Day and Fox Big Noon Kickoff and everywhere else that you can find online. West Virginia has its champion. And he is loud, and he's proud. And again, whether you like him or you don't like him, like, he bleeds old gold and blue and only wants to see success and positivity. So if West Virginia could find, whether it's Diversified Energy Stadium, Mountaineer Field at Diversified Energy Stadium, or it is Mountaineer Field at the Pat McAfee Show Stadium, I do not care. As long as, that number, again, Penn State's now making $3.5 million per year to have that for their naming rights. Wouldn't West Virginia like to have that as well? So again, I'm talking about West Virginia isn't going to be able to increase its athletic department revenue from $106 million to $250 million like Ohio State does. Even if they can get to $150 million, like the things that I'm proposing, I don't think necessarily get them there. Winning cures all, winning conference championships, being a hot commodity, getting on TV, deep postseason runs in football and basketball, and sustaining that for multiple years. In the same way, multiple years, or even fewer than that, like losing hurts worse than winning, that you can build all of these things that I'm talking about. But West Virginia now has synergy. It feels like, at least in financial terms, to stay afloat, to stay competitive, because Rich Rodriguez is now the head guy. And then what Ross Hodge is able to bring in, again, with the money that's now because of the Darren DeVries buyout and other things, like, you can go so far. I'm talking about how to maximize West Virginia's potential given the financial strengths that it has because of what the Big 12 is offering right now. And so this might be some ancillary. But going back to the naming rights for the stadium, I would be totally down for a logo on the stadium turf. I would be totally down for logos on the uniforms. And I don't care if it's Sheets, just like who are sponsoring the Pittsburgh Pirates and putting Sheets logos on the Pirates patches, put them on West Virginia's jersey. I don't care if the red and the yellow clash with the blue and the gold. And if you want to put logos on the stadium, go out there. And like, here's the other tough part is that I have yet to mention now, almost 40 minutes into this video, is that, what's the biggest corporation in the state of West Virginia? West Virginia University. So it's like there aren't all of these, how many Fortune 500 companies are in greater Pittsburgh? Last I checked, it was somewhere between 7 and 10. West Virginia doesn't have one in the whole state. So if there's someone who is willing to come to the table, we can't balk at them. I'd never put a Sheets logo on, my Mountaineers uniforms. If Sheets is going to go out there and give West Virginia $1 million a year, sign me up. I'll put a Sheets logo on my t-shirt or whatever. I don't care. So, gotta be accepting of that. I'm shocked. I know they have the stadium naming rights for the University of Kentucky for Kroger Field. They're in Lexington. But I'm shocked Kroger is not the official, as their naming rights on University of Cincinnati, Cincinnati's stadium and elsewhere, because Kroger is headquartered in Cincinnati. I've walked by the building before. So if Kroger wants to come out there and put Kroger logos on the 25s on each end zone and give West Virginia $1 million, fantastic. Give it to me. Last thing, and then I'll kind of wrap this video up, because I've hit on a lot of the points I feel like. Other operating revenue. That's a line item that West Virginia, I feel like something that's talked about a lot, because I've made the case, and it's very timely with the spring showcase, which is previously the Gold and Blue spring kickoff game, spring game for short, has happened in West Virginia. I've made the case in the argument that West Virginia should play Marshall in its spring game in a meaningless scrimmage game. So if West Virginia is not going to go that route, and Colorado and Syracuse tried this month with having a game, a scrimmage between two different opponents. But maybe it comes down the road. Maybe as soon as next season, it can be talked about between like the NCAA and competition committee, and who knows, that could be one element that West Virginia gets an additional game in the off season, again, between Marshall and West Virginia, and could sell tickets for. But some of the other operating revenue that like West Virginia could potentially pursue, and like it kind of took me back. I had to think about this. 2017, met a really good guy, coach, general manager of the Southern Illinois minor league baseball team, independent, actually, in Southern Illinois with one of my old jobs. His name is Mike Pinto, and pretty innovative guy. Again, coach, general manager, kind of operations and everything, and told me all about their use of the stadium out there and using it for family-friendly events in the community. And it just, as I was thinking about this, is like, across the baseball stadium, across the Coliseum, and the football field, those facilities are underutilized. I mean, if you really think about it, beyond the practices, Mountaineer Field is only utilized in official capacity 6 Saturdays, whether it's a Thursday or Friday, 6 Saturdays in the fall for 365 days. Why aren't other things being like held there? And I know practices, MAC events, this, that, and recruiting, this, that, and the other thing. I'm sure it's not just sitting there collecting dust all those other months. But are there opportunities that West Virginia maybe could have a concert there? I have read some things online about something about fire code and the egress and ingress of people if you had on the field, people like kind of sitting out in front of what would be a stage in the middle of the field. But my goodness, don't you think Charles Wesley Godwin, ultimate Mountaineer fan, and Brad Paisley could sell out, at least the bottom bowl? I would think if they did some sort of a collective fundraiser, or just bring in any big name that you think that could sell tickets, plus the students. And so concerts, I feel like, are a no-brainer, that they could try at the baseball stadium, that they could try at the football stadium. I know that there are concerts already that take place in the Coliseum, and that makes sense, and like they've been doing that for decades. My parents have told me about concerts they'd went to at the Coliseum back in the 70s and the 80s, so it's been going on eons. But concerts, I think like corporate, either corporate functions or, events, and like even so far drastic as weddings. Who wouldn't love, like, a guy who I talked to from like our it used to be WV Nation group, and you saw on social media a couple of years ago, his name's Doug. He got engaged right outside of they got married. I'm sorry, Doug. They got married outside of like the stadium gates, and like had a celebration and everything inside Milan Puskar Stadium just a couple of seasons ago. You can't tell me that there aren't hardcore Mountaineer fans who would love to have their wedding ceremony and whole function at Mountaineer Field. Like, I feel like that is totally within the wherewithal of possibility. But going back to what I talked about with Mike Pinto back at that time, they had at their baseball facility like a winter wonderland ice skate out on their all-turf baseball field. Could you put up, again, some ice skating rinks, or even have a hockey game held there like some of the other universities have across the country with winter classics that the NHL have? Or I'm just trying to think of like holiday related things that could be held that were, again, community oriented, get people in these. You have these multi-million-dollar beautiful facilities that could be used for other things. PNC Park has had a PNC Park is like a Top Golf type of, not driving range, but like different targets that fans could hit from up in the upper deck seats, launch off, and hit golf balls out onto the field. Now, again, it's not that far. You pull out a driver and you're going to hit the scoreboard or something like that. But I'm just saying there are different types of events I feel like that can be held to utilize these spaces for generating other revenue. So when I hear that it's not a expense problem at West Virginia and from Ren Baker and others, it's a revenue problem. But then like we're just going to kind of do the same old each and every year, then it's like I don't take no for an answer. I come up with creative ideas. This is just me as a guy who talks on the internet. So why not go a Coastal Carolina route to use that whole come back full circle to that analogy about the concessions and going that kind of route? I think West Virginia has to be creative. I think that it has to think outside the box, not just do what we've done every single year and break barriers, push boundaries. You've already done something that a percentage of the fan base does not like in hiring back an old football coach who unfortunately betrayed you once in 2007. So why not go out there? Let's go and let's sell the logo patches on the uniforms. Let's sell logo on the stadium turf. You got brand new turf coming. Why not slap some logos on the 25s? Yard lines. Let's sell the naming rights to Milan Pushkar Stadium. Let's again drive enrollment as best as possible. Michael Benson going to do a great job as president of the university. Just some other ancillary, and then all the things that I talked about in my WVU game day experience about tickets, concessions, parking, so on and so forth. So I'm already 46 minutes in for this video that you can go back and watch those videos and get an idea of what I argued for at that time. So I appreciate you tuning in. Am I loco? I ask that question I feel like every single video because these are just the crazy thoughts that come to my mind. Again, had to do a lot of research kind of into this, but I hope that I gave you some things to kind of chew on, mull over. And again, this isn't necessarily stuff that happens on the field or, as specific to any team per se. I am going to make another video later this week in lead up to the Old Gold and Blue showcase for the football spring game. So tune in for that. Be ready for that. Hope to have that for you probably like Friday morning. I'll have a lot still to talk about this spring off season and the practices and Rich Rodriguez's many press conferences and so on and so forth. But what do you think about this? Well, again, we hear this old adage all the time about West Virginia never has enough money, how they're trying to compete. And I've even said that reality many a times across my many different videos. So rather than just staying either complacent or just like life's not fair in the big life's not fair as we have it and have a temper tantrum and pout about it, like here let's go have some ideas. Here have a strategic plan that you can go out there, implement some of these things, make some money, and then again, if it gets West Virginia closer to the ballpark of a Virginia Tech, Maryland, Syracuse, like I said, Pitt, who are all higher in this valuation by CNBC about the most valuable college athletic programs, then because of the terms of revenue dollars that the athletic department is bringing in, then we've done everything we could. And as Mountaineer fans, isn't that always kind of like our living, breathing mantra? As we go out there, we have a no excuses kind of attitude, work hard, we don't loaf, we don't accept no as an answer, sometimes stubborn and going to fight for every inch and everything that we can to try and get our way as best as humanly possible. So, love to know your thoughts, good, bad, or indifferent. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I do this each and every week and have a lot of fun doing it. If you've tuned in for this whole program, thank you. Please give a like for me so more Mountaineer fans can see this across YouTube. Hopefully some people, hear this and think, oh, man, that Carson guy has some decent thoughts. You might want to give him a subscribe. So I'd love to be bringing you these kinds of videos. Love to hear your feedback. Try and comment on as many as I possibly can. Thanks for tuning in. And hail West Virginia, as always. Let's go.